Welcome on into the Triangle and Two show. I'm Luis Fernandez. He's Mark Bergin. WRAL Triangle and Two. Today we're going to be talking about the Masters, obviously. We're going to be talking about some NFL quarterback rankings, what the Panthers are going to be doing. But we will start things off with the transfer portal news and Caleb Love deciding to go to Michigan. Mark Bergin, Luis Fernandez. Mark, Caleb Love. Obviously, we've known for quite some time he was going to be leaving. He entered the transfer portal, the tumultuous season in general, blah, blah, blah. We've heard all of that already. But what does this news mean to you? How do you interpret this? Do you think it's going to be a good fit in Michigan? Let's talk about the Caleb Love stuff.
Caleb Love is going to be tasked with getting the Wolverines back into the tournament, Lewis. And I'm not talking the NIT. Now, I know a lot was made this past season with the Tar Heels missing out on the NCAA tournament, opting not to play for the NI and the NIT. But the Michigan Wolverines now are going to try to get back on track, led by Juwan Howard. He's been there for several years now after John Beeline taken over in Ann Arbor. Lewis, I thought you had a great tweet, though. I don't want to wish my life away. Come November, though, you've got two of these teams playing basketball in paradise.
Yeah.
The Tar Heels, the Michigan Wolverines, battle for Atlantis. How epic would it be while we're carving Thanksgiving turkey? We get to see Caleb Love go against his former squad. That is in play at this moment in time, and I cannot wait.
Oh, I don't think Caleb Love harbors any kind of ill will towards UNC. I mean, it feels pretty obvious that this was kind of a mutual decision. You know what I mean? I think it's both groups, Caleb Love and UNC, are going to be better off after splitting ways here. But still, I mean, he's an athlete, and if there's one thing athletes love to do, it's find motivation. It's to find that big old chip to put on their shoulder. So Caleb Love is definitely going to find that. Honestly, from his perspective, one, I respect going from Jordan Brand to Jordan Brand. I respect that from Caleb Love. But also, I mean, he needs to be somewhere where he's going to be able to be a focal point of that offense. And Michigan's a great program. And, Juwan Howard has proven he's been able to take the Wolverines on a couple of deep runs here. So, I think it's going to be a good fit for Caleb Love, depending, of course, on what the rest of the roster looks like for Michigan. They've lost a couple of folks as well.
Yeah, the third player to transfer to Michigan, though, this offseason. I'm curious to see how the Tar Heels fill the scoring void that Love leaves behind, because he was the team's leading scorer this past season, despite some of the inefficiencies. Now, here's what it's going to be, though, Lewis, is if the Tar Heels have success, what's the common denominator with Baycott and Davis coming back? It's, is it Love that was the problem? Is the conversation going to turn to say, he's the common denominator, he's the scapegoat for the lack of success? I don't think that's fair. I don't think that takes into account the glue and the floor spacing that Brady Manick brought to the table that the Tar Heels point blank period did not have this past season in trying to get back to the title game, and they don't even make the NCAA tournament. So I think that Caleb Love should be remembered favorably in Chapel Hill. He's the K-Slayer. He ended Coach K's 42-year run
K-Slayer
in the Final Four, Lewis. You couldn't have written a Hollywood script that would be believable. No. One of the most iconic shots, not only in the history of the NCAA tournament, but in the Battle of the Blues, Duke UNC. He should be remembered favorably for his time in Chapel Hill, Lewis.
I agree, and I'm sure. I think he will be. Time will pass, and I think he will be. But I do want to put this out into perspective, because you talked a little bit about he was the leading scorer, right? And yes, that is true. I think it was in Brendan Marks wrote an article a week or two ago, kind of just recapping everything and summarizing things. He spoke with Caleb Love's dad, and one of the things that he said was, who else was going to shoot the ball? And I think that's fair. They really didn't have, besides from an outside presence, right? Pete Nance struggled. He was not, I think, the perfect fit in kind of that stretch four that UNC was hoping he would be to fill that Brady Manick role. RJ Davis had a lot of great moments, but also struggled down the stretch. He had some injuries that he was dealing with, which I think really impacted him in the second half of February and in March. And then Armando Baycott is, a great, and is going to be remembered as one of the most prolific players to ever play at UNC, especially because of how long he's been there. But at the same time, there's only so much that you can do as a big in terms of scoring. So Caleb Love had to take shots, but it's the efficiency, man. I was just weird before we got started. I was looking at some of these. I've heard this floated around, but just to really put this in perspective, right? So Caleb Love, 16.7 points per game. He shot 37.8% from the field and 29.9% from three. Let's round up to 30% there. Okay. So from the field, he had 497 shots and made 188. Armando Bacot averaged 15.9 points per game. He had 334 shots. So that's 163 shots less than Caleb Love and made 185 field goals. That is 3 less field goals than Caleb Love made. Like, so a lot of the shots, it's like, okay, I know someone needs to take them, but if you distribute them out a little bit better, if you let more people do what they need to do, the hope is you're getting more of those efficient shots that like Armando Bacot wouldn't be able to provide. RJ Davis, we'll use him as another example here, right? We go to the 3-point percentage now. Caleb Love shot 244 threes. RJ Davis shot 174 threes. He was 36% from three. So you're looking at about what? As I do math, I'm head really quick, like 70 or so more threes taken. RJ Davis made 10 less threes than Caleb Love, 63 to 73. So
Wait, hang on, Lewis. Hang on, Lewis. These are all great stats. Let me jump in here.
Yeah.
We mentioned Pete Nance trying to fulfill that role of Brady Manick, and whether he did that or not, fine. You can't just blame it all on one player. Who's the player we're not talking about right now? And that's Leaky Black. And this is no knock on Leaky Black as an athletic wing, but consistently from the outside, if you're not going to get that 3-point shooting from Pete Nance, it has to come from another player. Leaky Black has just never been that player at the college level. The hope would be for Leaky Black if he goes into the pros, and we've talked about this off the air too, Lewis, with that he could be a 3-and-D guy, but he needs to go to a right NBA franchise or organization that can help with that shooting ability, that catch and shoot ability that you would seek from him, because he's like 6'9". He's got the length and athleticism that you would want from a wing. But if you're not going to get that outside shooting from another player other than RJ Davis, who's it going to be? And that goes into the floor spacing problems that I mentioned earlier.
And that's totally fair. And I think that's totally fair. The whole point of like, Leaky as a member of that starting five was he was going to give you great defense and he was going to make the, occasional corner three. He wasn't going to be the kind of person who was going to go out there and score all these points. But when you have a player like that in your rotation, you also have to be able to bounce that out from an offensive perspective. So does that mean the rest of your starting five have to be great shooters or at least better shooters? Does that mean that you need to get some good shooting off of the bench? And this is, I think, what we'll learn a lot about UNC next year is this whole roster construction perspective, right? They've lost so many players. Hubert was really not playing that deep of a bench. So was that because of, the players who were on the bench, or is that more of like just Hubert Davis's coaching style? That's what we're going to learn more about UNC moving forward. And that's what's going to be so critical, because you're right. Like having RJ and Armando Bacot back is going to be big for UNC, but they are going to need more scoring. And so they're starting to get some of those pieces coming in through the transfer portal. But, the question is it going to be enough? How is all of that going to get together? Because Armando Bacot is fantastic. And obviously, has been almost the ACC player of the year twice now. But I do think he's not as explosive as like some of these other bigs that we think of in UNC history. So the better the spacing is, the better it is for Armando Bacot.
And the players we just mentioned, Lewis, are just the starters. So if you're not going to get that outside shooting and that efficiency that you need to play at a high level, does it then come from your bench from a sixth man, whether that's Puff Johnson? So my point being, Lewis, I don't mean to single out one single player, but it's the accountability of we and not me, just one individual player. And bringing this back to Caleb Love, Lewis, it's, okay, if the Tar Heels have success, and I expect them to get back to the tournament next season.
Yeah.
When they have success, I don't want the common denominator to be, oh, well, it was Caleb Love's problem, when that is an oversimplification of what was happening this past season with the Tar Heels.
Yeah, the efficiency is definitely a big part of it, but you can't just blame Caleb Love for all the issues that UNC had. I don't think that's fair. And I know hopefully he has a lot of success at Michigan. They lost their top 3 scorers, with 2 going to the draft and then Hunter Dickinson going into the transfer portal. So there's a lot of opportunity for him to prove himself. I think his tweet that he put out there said something along the lines of like, rewrite your story. Caleb Love's going to have the opportunity to do that. 2 years of eligibility left, and I think, I hope at least everyone in the Triangle is wishing him nothing but the best moving forward, because he's a great talent, a great player, and so the question is, can you just round that out a little bit more from the efficiency perspective?
Luis Fernandez, the UNC alum, obviously the shot in the Final Four against Duke, but how will you remember Caleb Love?
I will remember Caleb Love from, I think, I mean, obviously the shot at the Final Four, but I think it's more about a feeling. And that feeling with Caleb Love is, I remember is the Syracuse game specifically in 2022. UNC was, this is before, obviously the game where they beat Duke in Cameron Indoor at the end of the season. So UNC is on the bubble, but they are trending on the right side of the bubble. But they're also, it's a very precarious position. So they need these wins. The Syracuse game comes down to the final, few seconds, the final few possessions. Caleb Love pulls up from a deep three on the final possession with just a few seconds left. And the entire Dean Smith Center kind of, you almost feel like no, don't do it. Like that type of moment. And then he drains the three and UNC ends up winning. So I think that kind of moment, I think, is a great just microcosm of Caleb Love's career at UNC, where he has this just the greenest of green lights to do whatever he wants. And sometimes that did not work out, but a lot of times he did hit some really incredible shots that I think will be well remembered, at least in the next few years for UNC.
If he cleans up his efficiency, I could see him being a great heat check guy off the bench as like a sixth man in the NBA.
He's already the epitome of the heat check. It's just a matter of do those heat checks start to go in.
Lewis, I want to tell a quick personal story. We'll go on. When I first moved here a little bit more than a year ago, I went to a North Carolina Louisville game in Chapel Hill, and I had to triple check that it was for men's basketball because the tickets were $8, and you have two perennial top 10 teams that year were just down. I believe Chris Mack, the Louisville coach, had gotten fired mid-season, and it was like, well, the Tar Heels will make the tournament, but it'll be more on legacy. And they went on a run, and we had a terrific time at the Dean Dome. And that was my introduction to basketball in the Triangle a little bit more than a year ago, a February game where I got in to Chapel Hill at the arena for $8 a ticket. So that was my introduction. It was fantastic. And so that's kind of how I'll remember him. And then they go on their run and they go to the title game. They're minutes away from winning the national championship. And then here we are a year later. They don't even make the NCAA tournament. I do expect them to regroup. And I'm going to say this again, and I'll say this before. Be patient with Hubert Davis, because while it might not be great Final Four level status this upcoming season, the year after, you got the #2 recruiting class in the country coming in. So be patient with Hubert Davis. You're not going to win the national title every year. I do expect the Tar Heels to get back into the NCAA tournament, though, in 2024.